สวัสดีครับ I'm Point from ค้นพบ Today I want to talk about psychological trauma. And is there such a thing as psychological trauma that is trapped in your body? Bottled up emotions per se. Now, to briefly give you a picture of what's going on here, when it comes to psychology or interventions to help with our psychology, our personal development, our mental health, there are two main camps or two main schools of thought on this. One school says that emotional trauma, psychological trauma, can be trapped and stored in the body. Okay, that's one school. The other says that that's not possible. There's no such thing as trapped, bottled up emotions, for example, right? Now, in my own line of work, in the mental health work that I do, you can follow me on my other page, Thrive with Point. As a mental health coach, from that school of thought, we take the position that there's no such thing as stored up or bottled up emotions. So in that regard, we don't consider that there is psychological trauma stored in your body. The only reason from this standpoint, the only reason for your current psychological symptoms or mental health issues is mainly due to the disempowering, unhelpful, and limiting beliefs that you currently hold and that you currently have. That's all it is, and we can work through that because a belief is nothing more than a thought you keep on having. But I've had a chance recently to, on my meditation retreat as well, to meet with and talk with a number of professionals in the line of mental health, and there are different positions on it. And that opened my mind to the fact about whether or not there is such a thing as psychological trauma. But here's how I like to look at it now. Whether or not there isn't the point. It doesn't matter. Because it is very easy for your mind to then conclude or think or believe that I'm going to be stuck like this forever because of the trauma in my body. The past happened. I had an emotional trauma, a psychological trauma in the past, and now it's stored in my body, and I can't do anything about it. I am a victim to it. I'm going to be stuck feeling powerless, helpless, hopeless forever in my life. Do you notice how that interpretation, that thinking in itself is not helpful? And it actually leads you to be trapped in a cycle where you are stuck feeling helpless because you don't consider that there's any other thing that you can do to make improvements or to empower yourself, and therefore you don't take action. When you don't take action, you still feel and experience the psychological symptoms, and you reconfirm and reinforce the belief that, see, I can't change, it's stuck in my past. So from the psychological or mental standpoint, that I would say is it's not helpful. It becomes something that you look and interpret as something outside of you, something external that happens to you, right? It is outside of you because it is outside your control. You see what I mean? It is outside your control. Something in the past, by definition, is something outside our control because it already happened and therefore it no longer exists. Trapped trauma in my body is something outside my control, or most likely it gets you to think, feel, conclude, and believe in that way, that it is outside your control to do something about it. Now, this begs the question, if you take the standpoint or the position that there is such a thing as psychological trauma that is trapped in your body, then let's say I'm open-minded to say that could be a possibility. I don't know. I don't have the facts, and I do see both schools, both ways of thinking having their own legitimate ways of looking at it. So I do appreciate that. But my observation that I want to put out in this video is simply that, let's say you believe that the cause of your current symptoms of anxiety, feelings of depression, feelings of low self-esteem, low self-confidence, panic attacks, or fears and phobias are due to some psychological trauma from some event that happened in the past and now is trapped inside your body. If you buy into this narrative, then it means that it will be more convincing for you to do exercises, say maybe a breathing breathwork exercise or maybe some therapy exercise to release that trauma. But you see, the thing is, in that process of healing or in that method of healing, there is no part in it that gets you to take back control of your psychology and mental health. There's no part in it that encourages you to consider what part your own psychology, your own mentality, your own beliefs and attitude has to play in the current creation of your symptoms. It doesn't teach you to be empowered. You see what I mean? You might focus on doing some body technique, body work, or some breathing technique, or be led to some misguided perhaps to some spiritual techniques to seek some healing from outside circumstances or sources of help, and in doing so you unwittingly teach yourself to believe that you need external help, when in fact you can take back control here and now by taking charge and taking responsibility for your thinking, your attitudes, your beliefs, your perceptions, and learn to challenge and change the unhelpful ones, the limiting beliefs that were formed since the day the traumatic event happened. If you see what I mean, if you see where I'm going with here. I'll give you a thought experiment to show what I mean here. Let's say that you believe that trauma can be bottled up as an emotion. Let's say you believe that you bottle up and you store your emotions. Okay. Which, by the way, there is, to my understanding, no current scientific literature or no scientific research that suggests that is the case. So in other words, my position is that you only ever create your emotions in a here and now by the way in which you think about something, the way in which you process your experience, which is influenced by your belief systems, by your underlying belief systems, which is nothing more than a thought you keep on having. A belief is nothing more than a thought you keep on having. Okay. So anyways, back to the example. If you believe that you store and bottle up your emotions, then I ask you this question. Ever gone to see a sad movie? When you go into the movie theater and you watch a very, very sad, heartbreaking film, right? And then you cry by the end of it, right? I ask you, did you store those bottled up emotions before entering the cinema? Of course not. What happened was, as you went into the cinema, the movie starts to play, there's music in the background, there's storytelling, there's the actors and actresses coming together on the film, and you buy into exactly what the director wants you to buy into, wants you to see, wants you to believe. And then when the final scene where maybe the main character dies, then you feel sad and you cry. You see what I mean? You did not store or bottle up those emotions. You merely created them in a here and now. And my position that I want to propose or submit for you to consider is that, isn't this much more empowering? Isn't focusing on your own current psychological outlook, your current mentality, your current perspectives, belief systems, attitudes, ways of thinking, isn't it much more helpful to focus on that? This is not to say that there is no value in other methods of healing. If trapped trauma happens to be a real thing. I'm not saying that there's no place or no value for them. There very well might well be. And I'm open-minded to think that there likely is even a lot of value in other treatments that are focused on releasing trauma from your body, if you believe that school of thought. But the point is, do you notice that what you truly have control over in any given moment is your mind? So you must learn to understand how your mind works, the psychology of your of yourself, your own psychological workings, how your mind or how your brain processes information and comes to a conclusion and creates a belief system out of it, and therefore that can either trap you or empower you. So in other words, isn't it much more helpful to focus on working and cultivating and developing helpful, empowering belief systems so that your psychology works for you, not against you, right? Because if you focus on things happening to me, the past happens to me, and therefore I can't change. The trauma is trapped in my body. It happens to me. It flares up out of nowhere, and I can't predict it. I'm panicking. You see, that's literally something outside yourself. It makes you feel as if these things happen to you randomly, that you cannot control it or that you cannot predict it, and therefore you're going to very, very quickly conclude that you are nothing more than a victim to it and that you're helpless to it, right? So I want to take that, leave that as food for thought in today's video. Now I'll give you one more thought experiment to illustrate what I'm trying to communicate here. So imagine a couple, a newlywed couple who gets married, okay, and then 2 weeks later they go on their honeymoon. Let's say they go on their honeymoon to the Maldives, okay, and they're having the time of their lives, okay, and they're looking back at the photos from the wedding, which was 2 weeks ago, okay, and as they look back on these photos, they think to themselves, oh, I am the luckiest man on earth. I'm the most lucky woman on earth to have fallen in love with you. Okay, so their life is pretty good. They're sitting on a beautiful beach on the beautiful islands in the Maldives, looking at their honeymoon photos, having a glass of wine or martini or whatever you want to call it. Okay, enjoying themselves, having a good time on their honeymoon. Then 3 years pass by or 5 years pass by, and they start to argue, and now, unfortunately, they're about to file for divorce. So now they're at divorce court, about to sign their divorce papers, and you ask them, look at the wedding pictures, look at the wedding photos, okay? How do you now think about the wedding? What do you think they're gonna say? Do you think they would still have the same viewpoint as when they were in the Maldives? Of course not. They would most likely think something along the lines of wow, I'm the most unlucky person on earth. How could it be such a dumb person to marry that witch, to marry that asshole of an ex-husband, or that uncaring woman, that uncaring man, that cheater, that abusive spouse. Okay. Now let's fast forward time again. 5 more years, and they meet a new person, they meet a new partner, and they get remarried. And now you ask them to look at the photos from the first wedding. What do you think they're going to say? Do you think they're going to have the same viewpoint as when they held in the divorce court, filing for divorce and signing the divorce papers? Or do you think they're going to look at that past and say something along the lines of, you know, now that I think about it, the first marriage was the best thing that ever happened in my life, because it taught me the valuable lessons that I needed to learn in order to finally meet my current relationship, which is my true soulmate. So then my point is, what is the truth here? You see? Do you bottle up emotions? Do you bottle up your trauma? No. The way you think about the past is always in relation to your current perception of it, how you currently view it, how you currently interpret it, perceive it, believe about it. And therefore, you create your emotions about it in a here and now. And we could say that this perception is almost like you wear a lens from which you look through to make sense of your reality. See what I mean? And so my only proposal that I want to submit here is, isn't it better to focus on this aspect? Because you always have control over your mind. It may not seem like that to you at the moment, but you can learn to take charge and take back control of your mental health, mental well-being, your psychology, so that your psychology is deep and ingrained and collected and internal. Internal meaning you realize that experiences are created from within, and if they are created from within, you yourself have the power to change and amend and control that and influence that in whatever way you want. You start to understand that life is not about what happens to you, but life is about how you choose to respond to it, how you choose to perceive it, and therefore make the best or do the best with what you've got. And that's most important. And one who realizes this is much more inclined to take back control of their life, see the value of putting in effort while being detached from outcome. This is not to say outcome's not important, but they see the value of effort and action taking and taking responsibility for their own mental well-being, and that becomes something meaningful for them, and they realize that they always have control in their lives because they always have control over how they respond to something. They don't feel a victim to it because they're not looking outside themselves to blame. They're not looking outside themselves to blame their ex-husband, their ex-wife, to blame their past, to blame that past traumatic event, and now blame that because of that horrible person who betrayed me, I now have deep psychological scars trapped in my body. They're not looking in that way. They are free from that. See what I mean? Again, I'm not saying this to discount the fact that there is no place for other forms of or other methods of healing, but I just want to submit this as food for thought. And certainly in the last clip of the last week that I shared in the video that I went on the meditation retreat, I do see a lot of value in how meditation work can help you overcome the suffering that is tied to or related to or comes from past traumatic experiences. Okay, so that is also one thing. But again, if that works, then I would argue it also works for a similar reason, and it's that it gets you to raise your level of awareness, raise your level of consciousness, your state of mind, and that you understand that in one essence, it's not about the past anymore. It's about how you view the past now. It's about how you believe about the past now. And you understand that, then by conclusion, you cannot escape the truth that to overcome that trauma, finally, once and for all, is you have to take back ownership. You can no longer blame your ex-husband, your ex-wife, or that person that cheated you. I'm not saying that they deserve to get off the hook, but I'm saying for your sake, you deserve to be free from that. And you are more inclined to consider what kind of helpful, empowering beliefs, thinking, psychological mindset would you need to adopt and would you need to work on in order to embody more of those helpful, empowering ways of navigating life, ways of leading life. Okay? I hope this video was valuable for you. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. สวัสดีครับ